There is a moment that changes everything, and it does not look powerful at first. No shouting, no dramatic exit, no long message that took you an hour to write. It is smaller than that, quieter than that, but it hits harder than anything else. It is the moment you stop explaining yourself to people who never cared to understand you in the first place. That is the shift. That is the line. Because some people are not listening for clarity, they are listening for openings. They are waiting for your guilt, your doubt, your soft spot, your need to be seen as good. And once you stop giving them all of that, the whole pattern starts to crack. Watch closely because this is where fake respect falls apart. This is where manipulation gets exposed without you needing to fight. And if you stay with me, you will see why the calmest boundary is often the strongest one in the room. Most people think power looks loud. It does not. Sometimes power sounds like a short sentence, a steady face, and silence that refuses to bend. And once you learn this, you will never look at boundaries the same way again. Because the real shift is not just saying no. The real shift is saying no without feeling forced to explain why. That is the part toxic people can never handle. That is the part that changes your life. Most people are taught the wrong version of boundaries. They think a boundary works best when it is wrapped in detail, softened with care, and explained so clearly that nobody can misunderstand it. That sounds nice. It sounds mature. It sounds fair. But in many real situations, that is exactly what keeps people stuck. Because the more you explain yourself to someone who benefits from crossing your limits, the more material you give them to work with. Every reason becomes something they can question. Every feeling becomes something they can minimize. Every sentence becomes another chance for them to pull you back into a conversation that was never meant to be honest. You say you are tired, and they say it will only take a minute. You say you are overwhelmed, and they say everybody is busy. You say you are hurt, and they say you are being too sensitive. Notice what is happening. They are not trying to understand the truth of what you said. They are trying to wear your boundary down until it becomes flexible again. That is why some people feel drained after standing up for themselves. It is not because their boundary was wrong. It is because they kept feeding energy into a person who was not interested in respecting it. The hard truth is this: a manipulative person does not need more information from you. They need less access to you. And the moment you understand that, your whole approach begins to change. Think about how often this plays out in everyday life. A friend only calls when their life is falling apart. A relative expects your presence no matter how you feel. A coworker treats your time like it belongs to them. A partner pushes and pushes until your simple no turns into a 20-minute explanation. At first, you think the problem is that you have not said it well enough. So you say it better. You make it clearer. You choose gentler words. You try not to sound harsh. You explain your stress, your schedule, your energy, your reasons. And somehow, after all that effort, you end up feeling like the difficult one. You end up apologizing for having a limit in the first place. That is the trap. It is not a failure of communication. It is a setup where your need to be fair gets used against you. People who respect you may not love every boundary you set, but they can still hear it. They can still adjust. They can still accept that your comfort matters too. But people who rely on guilt, pressure, and confusion do something different. They keep the conversation going until your certainty gets weak. They want you talking because as long as you are still talking, you are still negotiating. As long as you are still explaining, they still have a chance to push. That is why the no explanation boundary feels so different. It shuts the door they normally use to get back in. The boundary itself is not complicated. In fact, that is what makes it so powerful. You stop defending your limits. You stop offering emotional speeches to people who already know what they are doing. You stop trying to make your no sound beautiful enough for someone who profits from ignoring it. Instead, you say something clean. That does not work for me. I am not available for that. I am not discussing this anymore. My answer is the same. Short lines, calm tone. No extra language hanging off the sentence like an apology. That is where the strength lives. Not in a better argument. Not in a more perfect explanation. In a clean line that cannot be pulled apart. And yes, at first that may feel cold to you. It may even feel rude. But look closer. It is not rude to stop giving your energy to a cycle that harms you. It is not cruel to stop opening the door every time someone knocks with guilt in their hand. It is not harsh to protect your peace in simple language. In fact, one of the biggest lies many people carry is that they must be endlessly understandable in order to be worthy of respect. That is not true. You do not need to perform your pain in detail to earn the right to say no. You do not need to prove exhaustion before rest becomes valid. You do not need a courtroom case just to protect your own time. Now look at what happens inside the other person when you stop over-explaining. This is where everything gets exposed. Toxic people do not panic because they are confused. They panic because your boundary gives them nothing to grab. If you hand them reasons, they can argue with reasons. If you hand them guilt, they can pull guilt tighter. If you hand them doubt, they can turn that doubt into control. But if all they get is a calm answer with no emotional leakage, they hit a wall, quietly, suddenly. And that silence frustrates them more than anger ever could. Anger still gives them energy. Long speeches still give them access. Defending yourself still keeps you engaged in their frame. But calm finality takes that away. It tells them the conversation is over even if they want it to continue. That is why some people get louder the moment you get calmer. That is why they call you difficult when all you really became was clear. That is why they accuse you of changing when what really changed is that they lost easy access to your time, attention, and emotional labor. The reaction may seem bigger than the boundary itself, but that is because it was never just about the sentence. It was about the control hidden behind the sentence. And once control starts slipping, people reveal who they really are very fast. Pay attention there. That reaction tells the truth more clearly than their words ever did. Picture a simple example. Someone keeps asking you for favors at the last second. It is always urgent. It is always a crisis. It is always framed like you are the only one who can help. At first you step in because you care. Then it becomes expected. Then it becomes normal. Then one day you are tired. You finally say you cannot keep doing this. If the person is healthy, they may feel disappointed, but they will hear you. If the person is toxic, they will reach for the same old tools. After all I have done for you, I guess I know where I stand now. Wow, you have really changed. Notice how quickly the focus moves away from your limit and onto your character. That is not random. It is designed to make you defend who you are instead of holding what you said. And once you take the bait, you are trapped in a different conversation. Now you are no longer deciding what works for you. Now you are trying to prove that you are still kind, still loyal, still a good person. This is exactly where many people lose themselves, because the fear of looking selfish becomes stronger than the need to protect themselves. But here's the truth you need to remember. Needing a limit does not make you selfish. Having a boundary does not erase your kindness. Saying no to repeated pressure does not cancel out every good thing you have ever done. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is refuse to let guilt rewrite reality. The same pattern shows up at work, and that is where many people see it most clearly. A boss texts late at night. A coworker expects instant replies. A client pushes past the limits you set because you answered once before and now they assume you always will. Then the day comes when you decide to change the pattern. You stop responding after hours. You answer the next morning. Suddenly the energy shifts. There is irritation, passive comments, a cold tone, maybe even a line meant to make you feel responsible, like I guess you are not dependable anymore. This is the moment where many people start rushing to explain. I was asleep. I had family things. I needed a break. I did not see the message. But the second you start defending yourself, the focus moves. It stops being about a reasonable limit and becomes a trial where you are trying to prove your value. That is a losing frame. A stronger move is simple. I am available during work hours. That is my limit. Short, clear, final, no speech, no panic, no long emotional trail after the sentence. This does not make you less professional. If anything, it makes your standard easier to understand. People often respect the limits you hold more than the ones you explain. Not because they agree with everything, but because calm consistency teaches others where the line actually is. When your line changes based on guilt, pressure learns how to win. When your line stays steady, even discomfort eventually has to adjust. One reason this boundary matters so much is that it protects more than just time. It protects your nervous system. Every time you over-explain yourself to a person who keeps crossing lines, you send yourself a message. You tell your body that your no alone is not enough. You tell your mind that your comfort must be defended like a court case. You teach yourself that peace has to be earned through performance. That is exhausting. It wears people down slowly, not all at once, quietly, one conversation at a time, one apology too many, one extra paragraph, one more attempt to make someone understand what they were never trying to understand anyway. And that is why this shift feels deeper than communication advice. It is emotional self-protection. When you say less and mean more, something inside you starts to settle. You stop chasing approval from people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop managing every reaction around you like it is your job to keep everyone comfortable. You stop believing that another person's disappointment is automatically proof that you did something wrong. That is a massive shift. It gives your body a new message. My no can stand on its own. My limit is real even when someone dislikes it. My peace does not need permission. And over time, that message changes how you move through every room. You get less reactive, less shaky, less easy to hook. Not because life becomes perfect, but because you are no longer giving every push the power to define you. Of course, the first few times you do this, it will feel strange. That part matters. You may feel a strong urge to soften the line, to add one more sentence to help them understand, to rescue them from the discomfort of hearing no. That urge is real, and it can be intense, especially if you were trained to keep peace at any cost. But discomfort is not an emergency. Someone being unhappy with your boundary does not mean your boundary is wrong. Someone going silent, rolling their eyes, acting offended, or trying to guilt you does not mean you need to reopen the conversation. This is where silence becomes part of the boundary itself. Say the sentence, breathe. Let the pause sit there. Count to 3 in your head if you need to. 1, 2, 3. Then stop. Let the room feel awkward if it needs to feel awkward. Let them carry their own reaction for once. You do not have to rush in and fix it. That rush is often the exact opening they are waiting for. The extra sentence is where they regain control. The extra sentence is where your strong no turns into a soft maybe. So practice holding still. Relax your face. Keep your voice even. If they push again, repeat yourself. My answer is the same. I already answered that. I am not changing my mind. This is not about sounding robotic. It is about staying anchored. Repetition without panic is powerful because it tells the other person the door is closed. Not almost closed, not half open closed. And once you start using this boundary, something else becomes very clear. It reveals who only liked you when you were easy to use. This part can be painful, but it is also freeing. Some people seem warm, close, even loving, right up until the moment you become less available to them. Then suddenly they are offended. Suddenly you are hard to deal with. Suddenly they talk about how much you have changed. What really changed is that convenience ended. Your endless explaining had become a kind of leverage they counted on. It gave them access to your emotions. It gave them ways to pull you back in. When that access disappears, their real character rises to the surface. Healthy people can adapt to your limits even if they need time. Unhealthy people often turn your boundary into a personal attack because they cannot separate your autonomy from their loss of control. That is why fake friends may become cold the moment you stop being endlessly available. That is why some relatives get dramatic the moment you no longer play the old role. That is why some partners accuse you of being distant when what you are really doing is refusing to be managed through guilt. It can feel lonely at first because the mask slips, but that loneliness is honest. And honest loneliness is still healthier than false closeness built on you betraying yourself every day. Sometimes the boundary does not just protect your peace. Sometimes it shows you which relationships were feeding on your lack of one. There is another layer here that people do not talk about enough. Boundaries are not only about other people. They are also about the story you tell yourself. If deep down you believe that being good means being endlessly available, you will keep feeling guilty every time you protect yourself. If you believe that love must always look like sacrifice, you will confuse self-erasure with kindness. If you believe calm firmness makes you cold, then every healthy limit will feel like a betrayal of who you are. That is why this work is not just about finding the right phrases. The phrases matter, yes. But what matters more is the belief behind them. You have to start seeing that your needs do not become valid only when they are extreme. You do not have to wait until you're breaking down to say enough. You do not need visible damage before you are allowed to step back. You are allowed to honor your energy before it is gone. You are allowed to choose peace before you hit the wall. You are allowed to say no simply because no is true. That may sound basic, but for many people, it is a complete rewiring of how they move through life. They are used to giving their best self away first and then wondering why there is nothing left. This boundary changes that pattern. It teaches you to trust your own inner stop sign before the crash. And once that trust starts growing, your whole presence changes. You no longer speak from panic. You speak from self-respect. Here's where it gets even more powerful. The less you explain, the less drained you feel around difficult people. That is not because they become nicer overnight. Many of them will not. It is because you stop carrying the full weight of the interaction by yourself. You stop trying to create fairness in conversations designed to exhaust you. You stop trying to win understanding from people who are committed to misunderstanding you because misunderstanding gives them advantage. That one shift saves enormous energy. Think of how many hours people lose replaying conversations, rewriting texts in their head, wondering if they sounded too harsh, too distant, too selfish, too much. That spiral often begins because they were pulled into over-explaining in the first place. But when your answer is simple and final, there is less to replay, less to decode, less to regret. You begin to walk away from situations faster. Your mind gets quieter. Your body stays steadier. You start to recognize manipulation earlier because you are no longer lost in the details of your defense. And over time, something bigger happens. You stop looking like the easy target. People sense where they can push. They also sense when pushing will not work. Calm certainty changes the energy around you, not in a magical way, in a practical way. When someone realizes guilt will not move you, drama loses value. When they realize your answer will stay the same, they often stop wasting time trying to crack it. That does not mean everyone becomes respectful. It means you stop rewarding disrespect with endless access. Now, this does not mean you never explain anything to anyone. That would be a misunderstanding. In healthy relationships, explanation can build closeness. It can create understanding. It can help two people solve a real problem. But there is a difference between sharing with someone who cares and defending yourself to someone who is looking for a weak point. That difference matters. A healthy person listens to understand. A manipulative person listens to locate your opening. One relationship makes honesty feel safe. The other makes honesty feel expensive. Learning the difference will save you years. Not everyone deserves the full map to your inner world. Not everyone has earned access to every reason behind your decisions. Privacy is not dishonesty. Restraint is not cruelty. Sometimes the healthiest sentence is the shortest one. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is stop trying to make your truth digestible for people who only value it when it serves them. And if that feels uncomfortable, good. Growth often does. There is a reason this boundary feels so strong. It removes the old escape route. It forces you to stand beside your own choice without using explanation as a shield. That can feel naked at first, but after a while it feels clean, very clean. You begin to notice how much of your old communication was fear wearing the costume of politeness. You begin to notice how often you were not actually clarifying, you were pleading. And once you see that clearly, it becomes much harder to go back. So if you want to use this in real life, keep it simple. Pick a few phrases that feel natural in your voice. That does not work for me. I am not available for that. I am not discussing this anymore. My answer is the same. Use the one that fits the moment. Say it slowly. Say it once. If needed, say it again, but do not decorate it. Do not hand over extra explanations just because silence feels uncomfortable. Let the other person reveal what they were really after. If they respect the limit, you learn something good. If they attack it, mock it, guilt trip it, or turn themselves into the victim, you learn something useful too. Either way, clarity is a win. And here is the deeper truth underneath all of this. The boundary toxic people cannot handle is not only your no. It is your no without guilt attached to it. That is what breaks the old pattern. That is what ends the performance. That is what forces hidden control into the light. The moment you stop feeling required to justify your peace, you stop moving like prey. You stop waiting for approval to protect yourself. You stop confusing over-explaining with love and self-abandonment with kindness. And that is where real respect begins. Not when everyone approves. Not when nobody gets upset. But when you finally decide that your calm, clear limit is enough. Try it this week. Watch where you feel the urge to explain. Notice it. Stop there. That is the doorway. That is where your growth begins. And if this hit home, stay with that feeling because the moment you say less with confidence, everything starts to change.